Do you have quite the collection of acrylic blank keychains and badge reels, but have no idea what to do with them? Girl, me too. That's why I made this video. So in this Cricut tutorial, I'm gonna show you 4 different ways that you can decorate acrylic blanks using a Cricut machine. My name is Alex Vanover with DIY Alex, and I'm so glad that you're here. I have loved working with acrylic blanks for years, but if you're anything like me and you have a massive collection and no ideas on how to decorate them or what to make with them, I am here to help. So be sure to stick around until the end of this video because I'm showing you 4 different ideas, and after each idea, I have clips of other keychains that I've made over the years and lots of different ways to give you maximum Cricut inspiration. So let's get into it. So the first step to working with your acrylic blank and vinyl is to find the file that you need that goes with the acrylic blank. And if you're like me and a lot of your acrylic blanks come from 3rd degree laser, I wanted to show you how to find those acrylic blanks and how to size them in Cricut Design Space. So in order to get the files from the blanks from 3rd degree laser, you need to join their Facebook group. So I'll link their Facebook group down in the description below. And then you're going to go to the featured posts or whatever Facebook is calling it currently. It's the posts that are pinned to the top of the page. And you want to scroll over until you see a post from 3rd degree laser that says find files here. And go ahead and click on it. There are 2 different documents that you need to open. So the first one is a link to all of the cut files. So I like to hover over the link and then right click and click open link in new tab so that I have this one opening. And then you're also going to want to open the Google document that tells you the size that you need to make your files. So I'm going to hover over that link, right click, and then choose open link in new tab so I can open everything at once. So I'm going to be starting with the sunflower keychain, and one important piece of information that you do need to know is what your blank is called. So if you're not sure what the name of your blank is exactly, then you can go to 3rd degree's website and look up the actual blank itself. That's what it's going to be under when you look in this drop box for the files. So, and of course, we have some large categories here for different types of keychains and things. Most of them are going to be, or at least most of the ones I buy, I should say, are going to be under the 3-inch keychains folder. So I'm going to click on that, and then everything is going to be in alphabetical order. So I'm just going to scroll down until I get to the sunflower section, and then I can download my SVG file. So then once I get to the S's, I can keep on scrolling until you get to the sunflower blank. Now you want to make sure if you're using Cricut Design Space that you download the .svg file. If you're working with a silhouette, then you can use the Studio 3 file. So we'll click on the sunflower blank. And then in the upper left-hand corner, you want to hit the download button since these are from Dropbox. Next, you want to go into Cricut Design Space, and then you want to upload that SVG file that we just downloaded. So you'll click on the file and then choose Open. And then you can walk through all of the prompts in Cricut Design Space. Next, you want to click that file and then click the green Add to Canvas button to add this SVG file into your canvas. So to separate all of these, we are going to have our images selected, and then we're going to go to the new Look for the Ungroup tool, which is still at the top of the Layers panel, and click on that button. And then we may have to ungroup some more depending on which file we choose. Now I'm going to be using this one right here. So this is the only one that I want to keep out. I can go ahead and delete these other files. But I do want to note that the black silhouette image that is included with all of the SVG files from 3rd degree laser is meant for you to make your own SVG files. So this is like an exact copy of what the acrylic is going to look like. So you could go ahead and use this to modify it or to design your own SVG files. That's the purpose of the black silhouette. But since I want to use this one, I'm just going to go ahead and click on each of these files and then hit delete on my keyboard to remove these files so that I only have one left. Now there is a little bit of a tricky part of this, and that is sizing your file. So that's when you have to remember to go back into the files that we originally opened and go to the size chart, which is a Google document that is also in their Facebook group. So it is a 2-step process, so that is a little tricky to remember, but just make sure if you want to size them correctly that you do this. Now, instead of searching through the tons of products that 3rd degree laser has on this spreadsheet, I like to use the keyboard shortcut Control and then F. So if you hit Control and then your F key, that will bring up the Find
function in your Google Sheet, I just type in sunflower so that I can find the sunflower file super quickly and easily. Now also keep in mind that if you're not using the 3-inch keychain, you may want to go through these arrows and find a different blank, because there could be a sunflower in like a 2-inch keychain, as well as a badge reel and things like that. So make sure that you're looking at the correct product here for the sizing and everything. So just keep that in mind. But now I can see when I look at this column that the blank itself is 2.75 inches. So I need to go ahead and size my cut file to 2.61 inches tall by 2.55 inches wide. So I'm going to go back to Cricut Design Space, and in the width, I'm going to type in 2.61 inches and then press enter. And then I need to look at my height, and it looks like our height is a little bit too tall. It needs to be 2.61 inches tall by 2.55 wide. We'll go back into Cricut Design Space, and in the height, we'll type in 2.61 and press enter, and then 2.55 automatically shows up. So then once we have all of our pieces sized correctly, next we can go ahead and work with them to get them the way we'd like them to cut. So I'm going to click on my image again and then select ungroup, and then I need to make sure that all of my petals are attached. But it looks like we've got some extra pieces in this SVG file. So the only one I need to hang on to is this brown circle. So I'll go ahead and delete this circle that we don't need. And then it looks like we may have some other stray things left over in this file. I'll go ahead and drag out any of these like clear pieces, or these just line pieces. We don't need any of these. So we can go ahead and drag these off the petals and delete them. And I can tell that there are some extra extraneous pieces because the lines are a little bit thicker around the petals that have them. So sorry about that, guys. I wouldn't have chosen this file had I realized that this had all these extra pieces, but that's okay. So I'm just clicking and dragging off and deleting here anything we don't need. So we just need one copy of each of our files. That looks better. Now we're going to click and draw a box around everything, and we're going to choose attach to make sure that everything cuts exactly where we want it to. And then once we have our file all in place, next we can click the green Make It button and proceed through our project. We'll double check that our brown center is on the brown mat and that all of our petals are cutting in place. Then we'll click the green Continue button to continue through our project. So I'm going to be cutting my files out of StarCraft HD, which is just permanent adhesive vinyl. So for permanent adhesive vinyl, I like to use either the premium vinyl permanent glossy setting or just the plain vinyl setting. So choose your preferred vinyl cut setting. Make sure that you check the Remember Materials Settings button. And then I'll go ahead and cut these out on my Cricut, and I'll meet you guys over at my craft table to show you how to put these on our blank.
So when it comes to applying vinyl on your acrylic blanks, the first step is to remove one side of the protective coating. And I just usually like to use my weeding tool to do this. Then of course you're gonna wanna use permanent adhesive vinyl, and I already have mine all cut out. But my secret trick for always making sure that my vinyl is lined up correctly on my blank is to use a little piece of parchment paper. That way we can still see the blank through the parchment paper, but we can reposition our vinyl as needed to get it in just the right place. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the backing for my petals first. And then I'll place the transfer tape on top of my parchment paper, but I do want to leave a little bit of a stripe at the top exposed, and that way I can push down my transfer tape on top of my blank so that when I get it in place, it'll stay there while I remove the parchment paper. So then I'm just going to start placing it, and I usually like to begin by lining it up around the top, around the whole of the acrylic. So if I start with something like this, then I can see the blank through the parchment paper. And since the other side of the paper is still on, it appears a little bit brown, and that also makes it easier to see the edges. So I'm gonna move it around until I think it's where I want it. And then I'm just gonna push down that top section just barely to start sticking the vinyl to my paper. But then I can pick it up and take a closer look and make sure that I like it before I have to commit. I can also flip it over and look at it from the back side and see if any of the vinyl is hanging over. But I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and push down that top, lift up the vinyl and transfer tape, and then pull the parchment paper out while I slowly lower the vinyl onto my blank. Then once I have it on my blank, I'll take my squeegee and burnish it well. And then I can remove the transfer tape. Then I'm gonna repeat that same process with the center of the sunflower. So I'm just gonna apply that vinyl and transfer tape to the parchment paper, leaving the top a little bit exposed so that I can stick that to the blank when I'm ready. Then I'll put it on top of the blank and try to center it in the middle of all of the petals. I think that looks pretty good. So I'll push down the top and lift it up. Remove the parchment paper and push it down like this. Burnish it and remove the transfer tape. Then the very last step to finishing up this acrylic is just removing the back side of the protective paper. If you're not familiar with acrylic blanks do just have this colored kind of paper over top of them, if you will, and that keeps them from getting scratched while they're being cut, as well as while they're being transported. So sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's blue or even white, but all you need to do is remove it when you're finished, add some hardware, and your acrylic blank is decorated with vinyl. So our next acrylic blank decorating idea is to add a layer of UV resin with some glitter and then add a vinyl accent on top of it. And this is probably what I would consider like the most traditional way of decorating acrylic blanks, at least for me personally, because this is definitely what I use more often than the other methods. So when I mix UV resin and glitter, I like to start by pouring some UV resin into a medicine cup and then mixing my glitter into it. I've just found that I get a much more even mix that way, and it comes across a lot better on my blanks. So I'm just gonna put a little bit in here, maybe 5 milliliters or so, and then open up my glitter shaker and start mixing some in. You don't wanna oversaturate your UV resin with glitter so that it's like super sticky, because you wanna make sure that it's still able to spread easily. So for example, I have a little bit too much glitter in my UV resin here. To even out the proportion, I'm just gonna add a little bit more UV resin into my cup, and that will make everything better. So I'll just add another small squirt and mix that up. And that gives me a much better flow of my UV resin. Plus, this is chunky glitter, so that does make a little bit of a difference, but it should be able to flow off of my stir stick a little bit better like that. So I've already removed the film on the top of my snowflake acrylic blank, but I did leave the paper on the back because I want to make sure that if I get any UV resin on the back, that it doesn't get stuck. So if I leave that paper on, it just acts as an extra protective coating. So I like to start by putting a lot of my UV resin and glitter in the center of the blank. And then I just push it out using my little stick all the way to the edges. That way I make sure that all the little edges are covered. Especially with a shape like a snowflake, you have lots of little corners that sometimes the UV resin will shy away from if you don't dab your tool on top of it and make sure that it gets some product. I find it best to try not to let the UV resin go over the edges, but if it does, you can always clean it up later. But going nice and slow and not pushing it over the edge does make your acrylic blank a lot more clean. So UV resin is self-leveling, which means that we don't need to do a ton of work to level it ourselves. But when I'm finished adding all of this on, I'm gonna get down at eye level with the table and kind of use the light to see if there are any spots that didn't get covered or if there's any like dips or areas that are uneven so that I can fix them before they go under the UV lamp. So now that I have everything I think as even as possible, I know you guys can't see me do that, but I'm gonna get down eye level with the table and kind of look across the acrylic blank in the light and see if there are areas that reflect back and there are like little, almost like divots or holes. Like I can see this area right here is not even, so I'll just kind of tap it so that the UV resin will level itself out. Then when I like the way that everything looks, I will go ahead and set all of this aside because the UV lamp can cure this from afar. So I'll go ahead and kind of set it off to the side, and then I will cure this UV resin under my lamp for probably 2 sets of 60 seconds. And I can go ahead and put my stir stick with a silicone tip underneath the UV lamp as well. That way I can just flake off any of the extra UV resin. So I'll take my lamp and put it on top and cure it 2 times at 60 seconds. Then when it's finished curing, next I can add the layer of vinyl over top of my UV resin. So I'm gonna take my vinyl decal and remove the backing since it already has transfer tape applied to it. And in order to line it up properly with the edges of the acrylic, I am gonna use some parchment paper once again so that I can see the edges. And I always like to start with lining up the edges with where the hole on the acrylic is because that's an easy place for me to spot. And then I can reposition this using my parchment paper to make sure that I get the vinyl exactly where I want it before I place it. So I'll stick down that top section and then pull up everything and kind of take a look at my placement. See if I like it. Since it is such a light colored acrylic, it's a little bit hard to see. I think it needs to come this way a little bit. It's also extra tricky to do with gloves on. So then once I like it, I'll stick down that top section, pull up the transfer tape and vinyl and remove that parchment paper, then lay down my vinyl. Then to make sure that it's well stuck, I'll use my squeegee to burnish the vinyl. Then I'll remove the transfer tape. I noticed this piece at the top did go a little bit haywire, but otherwise I think the vinyl looks so good on there. And since this is a lighter color glitter, the vinyl will really help accent what the acrylic is. And then the glitter will just add some really beautiful shine. But before I cure this with some UV resin on top of it, I am gonna see if I can adjust this top piece because it ended up going a little bit crooked somehow. I'm gonna see if I can adjust it. So now that looks a little bit better. Now the next step that I'm going to take is I'm going to add some UV resin on top of my acrylic blank to kind of seal the vinyl into my blank. But I'm not gonna put any glitter over top of it in this particular instance. You could mix more glitter in if you want to. But if you're just gonna be using clear UV resin, then I can just go straight from the bottle onto the blank itself. Add my UV resin in the center. And then use my tool again to push the UV resin off to the sides. I can actually just peel off any of those previous times that I put it under the lamp. When you use a silicone brush like this, the UV resin peels right off after you cure it. So then I'll just push this to the edges here, just like we did before. Then when I've finished pushing it all over, then I'm just gonna bend down at eye level and check for any areas that have divots or bumps. And then once I'm satisfied with that, then I'll cure it again at 60 seconds twice under my UV lamp. Then once your acrylic is finished curing, the only last step that you need to take is to remember to remove the paper on the back side. And then once the paper is removed from the back, you can really see what your acrylic looks like. Then you can add your hardware of choice and your acrylic blank is finished.
So next, for keychain idea number 3, I'm going to show you how to take the SVG file that you get from Third Degree Laser and turn it into a print then cut file. Now this is really beneficial on keychains that have a lot of small parts that you may not want to mess with vinyl on, so you can just do a simple print then cut and knock out all the colors at once. For example, this keychain in particular would have a background along with all of these different colors on a different mat. And I don't know about you, but I definitely do not feel like modifying all of those. So I'm just going to turn this into a print then cut file. So the first thing I need to do is make sure everything is sized correctly. And remember, I did already show you how to do that in our first step using the Google document. And I did double check that the size is exactly what I need it to be. Next, I'm going to click on the background of the keychain and I'm going to turn it white because I just want white as the background of my keychain instead of black. Then I'm going to take a second and modify some of these colors so that it looks more like what I was picturing in my mind. And once those are done, then I'm going to click and draw a box around all of my give thanks letters, because as you can see, they're each a separate layer. So that means there's going to be a lot of pieces to move. So we want everything selected. And then I'm just going to drag it over top of my keychain background. But I need to make sure that everything is lined up really well around the keychain hole, as well as the offset all the way around the words. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to 150% so that I can see that everything looks good. And I think it's really, really close. One thing I want to do is go in my layers panel and select the white background. Then I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to just make really, really small movements until it looks perfectly even inside the keychain hole right here. That way I don't end up with an off-center keychain. And in case you guys didn't know, Cricut Design Space has recently updated. So now you can use the arrow keys to just very subtly move some of your shapes. That way, in case you want to make just really small movements, you don't have to accidentally mess up the alignment by using your mouse. So the arrow keys on your keyboard are a great tool in Cricut Design Space now. So once everything is even and you like the way that it looks, next we need to turn this SVG cut file into a print then cut file. So the easiest way to do this is to click and draw a box around everything to select all of the layers in our image, then go to your actions panel and select flatten. And that's going to take away all of the black outlines because this is what our image is actually going to look like when it cuts. And you can also see in the layers panel, it now says print then cut. So now we know that our operation is correct and exactly how we want it. So once it's ready to go, we'll click the green Make It button. And then we know we're going to be cutting this out of some sort of adhesive vinyl. I'm going to be cutting mine out of matte sticker paper, so I don't need to mirror or anything like that. I'll just click the green Continue button to proceed through Design Space. Then you can follow the rest of the print and cut steps to choose your chosen cut setting and all of that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and print this out and I'll see you guys over at my craft table to show you how to add this to your keychain. Now I know I'm skipping a few steps here with print then cut because the purpose of this video is to get ideas and inspiration for acrylic blank keychains. But if you need more help than print then cut and you need to see the process from start to finish, I'll go ahead and put a card up here in the corner of the screen where you can watch this video to go all the way from start to finish with your print then cut projects.
So once you have your print then cut image cut out, then you can just simply peel it off of the sticker paper or vinyl backing, and we'll double check that the sticker paper around the hole is gone as well. And now we just need to line it up on our blank and stick it on. So I usually like to find a part of the blank that's like a little bit more unique, like around the top of this G. So I'll line up the hole as well as the outline around the G, and then hopefully that will line it up well with the rest of the blank. Kind of started out like this. Now, the only thing I found about sticker paper is it is a bit trickier to unstick it once you've gotten started. So I don't recommend pressing it down until you are really ready to commit. But actually, I kind of changed my mind. I'll look around the whole of the G, but I'm also going to take a look at the bottom because it has all of these notches. So that should make it easier for me to line it up. And I'm going all the way to the edges. So I'll kind of stick down that bottom section. And then I'm just going to kind of lightly lay it down and see where that gets me. And actually, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and fully lay it down and push it into place. So I was off a little bit around the edges. And so to correct that, what I'll do is I'll just grab an X-Acto knife and kind of trim off all of those sections before I seal it in with some UV resin. So I'll just run my X-Acto knife around those edges, and that will make my cut look super nice and neat. And you won't even be able to tell that I didn't place everything perfectly. So then once you have everything trimmed off, if you're gonna use sticker paper, then I do recommend you seal your acrylic with some UV resin, because sticker paper is not super durable, so it definitely needs to be sealed in with something. So I'll begin by putting my acrylic on a silicone trivet so that I can use UV resin without worry that it'll mess up my table, and add my gloves. Then I'm gonna add some UV resin straight from the bottle. Now you could mix some glitter into this if you wanted to, but I'm just gonna keep things really simple since this is already a really colorful image. So I'm just gonna add a real thin coat of UV resin before I cure it. Then once your UV resin is well spread out, next you can cure it to make sure that it's hardened and ready to be used as a keychain. I usually like to do 2 60-second cures to fully cure under my UV lamp. So then once it's done curing, you will want to flip your keychain over and remove the paper on the back side. Then add some hardware and your keychain is finished. So the next idea that I have for decorating acrylic blanks is by adding rhinestones. Now I'm actually going to be doing this on a badge reel instead of on a keychain, but you can still do this with any kind of acrylic blank, so I just thought I would show you a different example. Now you may have already noticed that this badge reel already has vinyl on it, and anytime that you're doing rhinestones, I recommend that you add vinyl first, because this is a great way to guide where the rhinestones are going to go, and it really helps the rhinestones pop because the color in between with the vinyl really fills in the areas where the rhinestones are not. So it always ensures that you can tell what the object or design actually is if you put down vinyl first. So I've applied vinyl to one side. And now I'm going to be using rhinestones from a company called Royal Glitz Bling. And I took one of their Gold Rush Bling mixes and I pulled out all of the gold rhinestones. And the reason I use gold is because I wanted it to match my vinyl in the center. I think it looks really nice if the color of the vinyl actually matches the color of the rhinestones, because it just makes everything look really cohesive. So I'm only going to be putting rhinestones in the yellow area of the badge reel. So I'll grab my rhinestone tool. And my favorite adhesive for rhinestones is this liquid fusion glue. You can find this in my Amazon store, but I have found this works really well for the rhinestones themselves, as well as for the badge reel on the back. So I'm just going to pull the top off of my liquid fusion, and I like to just put out a little bit of glue at a time. That way it doesn't dry while I am in the process of picking up my stones. And I've usually found that outlining the design first is a great way to make sure that everything stays where you want it to and the stones don't get pushed outside of the vinyl. So I'm just gonna lay a little bit of glue along the top row here, and we will start with that. Then I'll take my rhinestone tool into my rhinestone tray and just start grabbing random stones. You want to be sure to push them into place with your rhinestone tool. Make sure they are touching the surface of the badge reel or the acrylic. So to spread the glue out, I'm just going to take this little paintbrush and kind of swipe some of it down like this. That will give me some more surface area out of my glue and keep my rhinestones from looking a little bit more messy. So I'll set this off to the side, and then I can place the stones accordingly. And I can start filling in the areas where I spread the glue out to make sure that it's still nice and sticky while I'm placing my stones. Because obviously if your glue starts to dry, it's not going to hold the stones very well. I personally like to use different sizes of stones all in the same mix. I really like the way that that looks, and I think it adds a lot of visual interest, but you are also more than welcome to just use like one singular size all the way through your project. Some people prefer that more like uniform type of look, but I like a little bit of a hodgepodge. I think that looks really, really pretty. So here is how our top section looks so far. I love it. I love how sparkly it is and how pretty. So now I'll just continue the process of adding glue and adding more stones until the whole area that I want to rhinestone is covered. While the glue is still wet, you can definitely still manipulate where the stones are. So if you have one that's popped out of line or isn't where you want it, you can use the longer metal end of the tool to kind of push it back into the barrier of your vinyl until the glue is dry, of course, and then your stones are set. Then once you're all finished with your rhinestones, be sure to give your glue plenty of time to dry, and then I'll go back and remove the backing and add the badge reel on the back. So once your rhinestone glue is good and dry, then you can flip over your badge reel and remove the paper backing. And then it's time to add your badge reel. So I usually like to add my glue specifically to my badge reel blank, and then I'm just gonna basically place my badge reel on top and then allow it to dry, of course, before using it. I'm gonna take my liquid fusion. You can also use E6000 for this. And you're gonna wanna add a generous amount of glue. You definitely don't wanna be skimpy in this situation, because you want this to stick very, very well. But I also don't want to go too close to the sides of my badge reel, because when I push the actual badge reel onto this glue, it's going to squish out the sides some. So you don't want to bring it all the way to those edges. So I like to do something like this, and then take the flat section of your badge reel and kind of gently place it on the back in the middle. I also try to make sure that my clip is straight, and then kind of push it in place, but not too hard in case the glue all kind of squishes out. And then you can just set this aside. I usually like to set it aside for like at least 24 hours before I really touch it and move it a whole lot, because that glue is very, very thick and it does dry quickly, but it takes a little longer to set than it does to dry. So make sure you give it plenty of time before you wrap it up and give it away or use it yourself. But otherwise, your badge reel is finished. Which one of these acrylic blank ideas are you dying to try? Let me know down in the comments below. If you learned something new in this video, then be sure to give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to DIY Alex for more weekly tutorials a lot like this one every single Tuesday. And I love getting to know you on social media, so if we're not already connected, then use the links down in the description below to find me on all your favorite social media platforms. All the hearts.